Can you believe it? Because I can't. The news dropped on Friday, that was 2 days ago. It's currently Sunday afternoon as I'm recording this, and I don't think I've stopped shaking. Every time I've opened my phone and seen a picture that the remasters for 4, 5, 6 are actually happening. What? But yeah, not really sure where to begin, but in this video I am going to be diving into everything that we've seen so far, doing a little bit of an analysis on everything. There's probably 1,000,001 videos just like this out already, and if you've already seen what I'm about to say, sorry. There are going to be some spoilers in the video for those of you who haven't played the original 4, 5, 6. I am going to be looking into the list of trophies, which is going to reveal quite a bit about the game, and I'm also going to be touching on some of the little bits and pieces along the way. Hope you join me.
Time to put things right. Got a feeling this isn't quite what it seems. Give a girl a break.
So cool. Okay, I'm going to do this a little bit differently. I am going to break the trailer up into its individual pieces, categorize them by game, and we're going to go through them chronologically by game order. So of course, up first, we're going to dive into TR4. Up first, we have one of the sections from the rolling title sequence. Or perhaps it was actually from the end credits. I can't remember exactly where this bit is placed. But I know that it's not in the game itself, which I have always thought was a massive crime. Because look at what we have going on with this. I don't know if I have ever seen such an incredible glow-up from a PS1 title to today. The level of detail that has gone into that statue of Set. It's beautiful. I don't expect we will, but I would love to play that. We are also in this getting a bit of a hint as to some new fire effects, which look slightly different from the ones in 1 to 3 Remaster. But I'll dive into that a little bit more later. Next up we have the extremely exciting train section. Right here we can see that the train is now a steam train with this billowing cloud coming out of one of the chimneys at the front of the train, which wasn't present in the original. But of course that's not the only cosmetic change, because we have the upgraded environment surrounding the train, complete with vegetation and plants growing on the rocks on the side of the train as well. One thing that I really like the look of in this section of the trailer is how they seem to have kept the, I believe it's called fog of war effect, where you can't actually see into the far distance and they've got this sort of fog obscuring what Lara can see, or what the player can see. Now this technique was used in abundance in the first few Tomb Raider games, possibly because of limitations of technology, not entirely sure, someone correct me on that. But the way in which this level has been made, I think it's something to do with the fact that part of the scenery keeps looping, and this is such a great way of hiding that. And it also adds quite a bit of mystery. I do like this sort of dust storm that's going on around the train. It looks really cool. In this screenshot you can see Von Croy's premium guard looking amazing. Look at the detail on their scarves. And again, harking back to what I was saying earlier about that fog of war and how this dust storm or sandstorm is actually obscuring the view, so you can't see the engineering behind the level and how it's actually sort of looping as the train goes through it. Next up is that fateful moment where Lara changes the course of, well, her life, but also the world. She steals the Amulet of Horus from Set's sarcophagus. Oh, this is a very pretty room. I do like what they've done with this. We do get a little bit more visibility in some parts of the room, and I think that is definitely to do with more realistic lighting effects. If you look at this first bit from the original TR4, you've got the flames on the corners of the room, and of course that would actually light into those currently dark spaces. Not lying, it does look very atmospheric here, and the shadows are still there, but they are where you would expect them. So you can see this light behind where Lara is on the floor. That is, of course, lighting up the huge alcove at the back of the room, but the column is obscuring the light, so you have the dark sides in the corners of the room instead. But the thing that I noticed properly about this one is this is your first proper glance at the updated fire flame textures. Now they look quite different if you compare them to the flame textures from the 1 to 3 remasters. These look really cool. I think they look better. Set Sarcophagus has also had a little bit of an upgrade. It's closer to the FMV model. You can see the little heads, the jackal heads, the set heads, that of course his blood trails out of and turns into sand. From the FMV, you can actually see them on the side of this model here now. Next up is the room with the horrible big spinning blade. Not much to say about this room. It looks shiny, nice. The blades have been given a slightly more sort of padded out 3D-ness. And of course those star shapes on the floor are where some of the gigantic spikes can come through in this game. Here we have something right from the end of the game, spoilers, and that light beam coming from the heavens down into the Temple of Horus looks super cool and really shiny now. I love how that looks. And these broken stone wall textures look really nice as well. The vibe and atmosphere of this place seems to have been kept pretty identical. I know a lot of people would be happy with that. And next up, we have another really cool transition from the original TR4's Lost Library into the remastered version. And you can actually see those shelves behind. I think they have been made in 3D, which is very cool. That might just be my eyes. Please someone else chime in with that. I'd like to know if you think they also look pretty 3D as well. You know, it took me a long time and many different playthroughs to realise that that wasn't just fancy wallpaper, effectively, and like throws or rugs on the wall with like little circle patterns on. I never used to realise that that's supposed to be scrolls. 5 dumb points to Chris. On to the dastardly snake fire puzzle in the same level. Again, we have some more of that really cool new fire animation. But I love how these snakes look. There's a little thing that's happening on the floor here. You can just see the white lines, the star that connects the snakes. These look slightly 3D. If you keep your eye on the base of the snake statue, you can sort of see there's a distinct 3D-ness about those. But that doesn't just happen in this room, that will happen a little bit later on in one of the other scenes as well, which is quite a nice new effect. I don't think in Remaster 1, 2, 3 they did anything 3D with, or rather anything new 3D with floor textures, so that will be interesting to see where else that pops up in the game. Not much to say about this next one. Lara using one of the stars in one of the coolest rooms in the series. I will die on this hill, thank you very much. The astronomy puzzle in the Lost Library looks beautiful, and it always has. I literally can't believe that just not too long ago, in one of the very recent playthroughs with Alf, I was commenting exactly the same. Imagine how good this would look in a remaster. And here we are. I'm still pinching myself. But you can see in this one, as I was mentioning about the 3D floor in the snake room, The orbits of the planets and the celestial bodies have also now got that sort of 3D pattern thing going on with them, so they are slightly raised off the floor. You can see it in some of the screenshots as well. There is one thing though that I would absolutely love in this area, and I don't expect it's going to happen, but you know, if it was up to me, I would make that ceiling a little bit more like Bugenhagen's observatory in Final Fantasy VII Rebirth.
Wow.
Just get a slight sort of animation going with those nebulae and stars above. Keep the designs, the circles and the orbits and everything, of course. And those blue lines, of course, keep those, but the stars themselves, have them twinkle, have that gas sort of slightly moving. I think that would look so pretty. Now on to another bit from, I think, Burial Chambers? I might be wrong. It might be, you know what, this might still be Lost Library. But one thing I noticed is that something that was present in 1 to 3 remasters, when Lara lands, her hair clips through her body, that still seems to be something that's happening, as you can just see in this bit of the trailer. I do expect it'll stay, and it's not really a big deal when you think about it. Is our first look at those horrific spikes. God, they always creep me out. And into the final area of the game, set in all his diabolical glory, looking really awesome. I did wonder if they were going to implement some other tactic in this last fight, but I think they've kept it the same. That being because one of the things that they have announced for the 4 to 6 remaster is a health bar for enemies, and as you can see, no health bar for Set. The implication being he is still immortal, of course. And you can just about see the detail on this character model. He has claws, hieroglyphs on his parts of his clothes. Really damn cool. Really, really damn cool. I have a couple of things left to go through for the Tomb Raider 4 section before we move on. In one of the screenshots released, I think from the PlayStation blog site, you can see some of the additional options that have been made for this game. They all seem pretty straightforward. Control type, of course, we're getting the tank or the new controls to go with. Dash and duck give you the option to hold the button down, or I imagine toggle, so you can actually just switch those on and off with the press of a button this time. One thing I am not sure about, though, is slide to run. If anyone has any idea what that could actually be, if I'm just being really silly and not realising that that's actually something really obvious, please, in the comments, let us know what slide to run is. Now, there's a page on Twitter, or X, whatever you choose to call it these days, called Infinity Tomb Raider, that is at Infinity T Raider, one word, who has done quite a big deep dive of their own into this, and I will show you snippets of what they found. But if you want to see this in more depth, please go and check out their page. They've done a lot of work into it, and it looks great. They've brought some things to light that other people have found as well, to do with the new model for Tomb Raider 4. In particular, some of the smaller details that some people might miss. Lara now seems, instead of the black line around her eye signifying eyelashes, actually seems to have eyelashes for once. But also her fringe looks slightly different than it did in the previous 3. In other ways, this model seems like a hybrid between the FMV model and the in-game model. In this game, she is wearing a leotard, as you can see those gaps above her shorts, whereas in the FMV model of the original game, it was, well, I guess it was the same, but it didn't look like you had that gap. But in contrast to the in-game model, Lara now has holster straps, which were missing in Tomb Raider 4 and 5. Never really been sure why those were missing, but guaranteed source of exasperation and anger for a few people. I know in the past when people were hoping for remasters, I saw quite a few surprising amount of comments saying that they really hope that they leave the gun straps off. Never really understood why. If she's running along, they'd be like slapping at her sides, surely. No expert, but personally I'm glad they're there. Another awesome little detail in the TR4 model versus the remastered 1-3 model. In last year's game, the soles of Lara's shoes were flat. In this one, they have 3D grips, and it looks pretty cool. And with that, we're going to move on to Tomb Raider Chronicles. First up is this really awesome room from the end of the Colosseum level. I'm just going to leave this on screen for a few seconds just so that you can really appreciate some of the details that we've got going on here. This is the room where we fight the old Silver Boy in the middle, but aside from him, look at the detail in the ceiling. It really appears as though we've got those sort of indented squares going all the way across it. Again, it could just be very clever texturing. Please let me know if you think I'm just going mad. Then comparing to the original as well, you can see that the busts either side of that plinth have had a little bit of a makeover as well. They look much better than they used to. And there's some really nice lighting going on here as it's sort of pouring in from these alcoves on the left-hand side. And with that new lighting, you can also see how the shadows are cast from that really intricate fence. Of course, those kind of shadows weren't in the original, so that is a very nice little touch that they've got going on. The background model of the Colosseum looks as though it's been properly built, as opposed to just the 2D texture of the original. Very on brand for this style of remaster, and it looks fantastic. I really, really like how this looks. Surprisingly, given my personal life, this section of Tomb Raider 5 has never been my favourite, but I wonder if these remasters could change that. And finally, before we move on from this particular area, I really can't wait to see this room remastered as that gold bleeding out everywhere from the Philosopher's Stone. That could look very cool. Imagine if it's just as shiny as the gold Lara was in TR1 Remaster. Oh, that could look good. Next up is the Haunted Chapel from the Black Isle in Ireland. Whew. Look at the ambience in this. From those added new little candles on the pews and the moonlight pouring in through the windows, and don't even get me started on that whatever it is sat on that pew. Like the original was creepy enough as it is. Yeah, this is looking creepier. I was just at the Tomb Raider 28 celebration over the weekend when this trailer dropped, and somebody said, "Oh my god, it's that church." And somebody said, "I really, really do not want to see those ghost skeletons." And I have to agree, they're going to be creepy. Bring it on. Finally, for TR5, we have some shots from VCI, Escape with the Iris, and 13th Floor. The footage in this is predominantly in the elevator shaft, and this has been given quite a 3D overhaul, I've got to say. Like, the cables everywhere all look 3D. And of course, this is now our second outing with Lara in her catsuit. There is one part of this footage that I'm not super keen on, and that's her new sunglasses for this area. In the original, she wears black sunglasses, and I think they look a lot better than these transparent ones. But I imagine someone will mod it, so doesn't matter. Of course, this was the first instance in which we got Lara wearing a headset, linked to Zip to give Lara some tech support during her time in VCI. The only remaining piece of media that we've got left from the TR5 section of the trailer comes in the form of a screenshot. Again, I think it was from PlayStation Blog or maybe from the Xbox store. That super fun X-ray corridor that Lara runs down and we see everything turn to green. There's some very cool details in this. You can see her entire skeleton in this one. Whereas on the original you could see the screen that she runs past. In this one you can actually see her retro model on the screen, but also the curious little detail that this takes place on the 5th of September 1998, which brings to close any speculation about when exactly this mission took place. And with Chronicles complete, let's move on to the hot topic on everyone's feed right now, the Angel of Darkness Remaster. Cannot believe I get to say those words. Up first is what I consider one of the greatest tombs in Tomb Raider history. Yes, of course, it's the Hall of Seasons, and this is the central hub area with the panels of seasons, I guess, on the floor. Now, there are a few actual differences in the remaster by the look of this. I'll put them side by side so we can have a look at them. Now, while the Zodiac and the Seasons paintings on these panels on the floor do match up, some of them are different. The one that stood out the most to me was one of the panels on the left-hand side. In the original, we have the Capricorn symbol of the goat with the snail shell on the back, yet in the remaster it is simply a goat. Interestingly, in the original, mixed in with these paintings are what I think I always considered to be not blank tiles, but perhaps where the paint has worn away, so it's just sort of stone. But the remaster has interpreted that in its own way and given it a little bit of extra detail, and the detail being the waterfall face from the Hall of Neptune side room. There's a couple of other details in this room that I wanted to point out. The central circular support platform, I guess on the first floor of the hall, now appears to be hollow. You can see sort of bars around the inside inner ring, whereas it's a solid metal ring on the original. But one other thing stood out to me, and that is that on the ground floor of the Hall of Seasons in the remaster, there are two Lux Veritatis skeleton warriors, whereas in the original there was just one. Whether or not they have added an extra enemy to this level, or if the one from the first floor somehow made his way down, can't tell at this stage. I am fully up for there being more enemies, but I hope they improve the combat, but we'll dig into that a little bit later when we start talking about trophies. On to the Sanctuary of Flame, and there is very little to say about this. It looks amazing, but it always did. I'd say it's 99% identical. Hopefully some of those jumps are easier though. The Louvre Museum looks beautiful. Very, very sharp, very crisp. The Mona Pita, the famous picture of, I want to say, Peter Connolly really hungover as the Mona Lisa is still there. They couldn't have taken that out. People would have raged. I'm so glad they've kept it in. The bioresearch facility has so much potential to be absolutely stunning, and I really hope they do it justice. Doesn't look at this stage like a great amount of work has been done on it yet. Like, I'm looking at Lara shimmying up that pipe and all of the sort of foliage behind it. Compared that to Tomb Raider 1 Remaster, you'd be seeing vines hanging down and all sorts of things. So it wouldn't surprise me if there is still a fair bit of work to be done, but I have confidence it's going to look pretty special when it's finished. The only other snippet of AOD that we have in this trailer is at the end when it says 456 and you get sort of blurry footage behind, and this one shows Lara kicking the absolute shit out of one of the museum guards because, I don't know, presumably he called her a name or something. But it does go to show that melee combat is still in the game, which leads me to think that they haven't necessarily overhauled the combat. As I said earlier, I'm going to touch more on the combat when I talk about the trophies, because not long at all after the announcement, somebody found a list of trophies for the game, and considering how fast they found them, it wouldn't surprise me that it is real. I guess there's still some debate as to whether or not it is real, but I'd say most people agree, yes, this trophy list is real. Now, I'm not going to go over every single trophy. That would take a long time, considering there's 168 of them, but there are a few that stood out to me, so I will just point these out to you guys because they reveal a few things. This one here lets us know that the character Jean-Yves is still in the game. Nobody thought he wasn't going to be, but there was a lot of speculation as to how they would do it in terms of his name, because there was a lawsuit back in the day when the real-life archaeologist Jean-Yves took umbrage with the fact that they had used his name, and he also claimed that they used a character model that kind of resembled him, but also he claimed that his office in the game looked very similar to his actual real-life office, which very likely just coincidence, but still it caused a big hoo-ha and Core had to pay damages. So people were suspecting maybe they would change this guy's name, maybe they would make him Charles Kane, and yet here we are. We still have Jean-Yves. I'm not quite sure how they've got away with that this time, but maybe there'll be more info in the future. Devourer of the Devourer. Defeat Amit. Amit is the soul devourer in the cages in the Temple of Horus, that if you get the puzzle wrong, it comes out and eats Lara. I don't think you can kill it in the original. So defeating Amit, perhaps it just means solving every water puzzle correctly? Or perhaps now there really is a way of destroying it. This one, stress level 0, looks interesting. I'm not sure what this is actually referring to. Don't make Lara nervous before she takes the secret and finds the Spear of Destiny. Interesting to see what that's going to turn into. Was there a stress meter? It's been so long since I played that. Finish your training in the back alleys in Tomb Raider 6. This could imply that what people refer to as a secret area, if you manage to get through the gate in that very first courtyard and it opens up into another little mini area where Lara can learn a few more skills, perhaps that is back in. This one confirms what a lot of people have been hoping for, that dual pistols are indeed in Angel of Darkness, officially at last. But there's two different types, which is very exciting. Defeat an enemy by shooting around the corner. This was an animation that we saw in one of the very early trailers. It was really cool. It looks like they've reintegrated this into the game. And then these final two really implied that they have opened up all of the previously closed areas, well, not so much closed, but unfinished areas in the Parisian backstreets, allowing us to buy more things and actually giving them a proper purpose. Now, with AOD seemingly requiring the most work, fans are expecting a lot, and it's admittedly difficult for those of us who love the game to keep our expectations in check, but what realistically am I expecting? Rather like the previous remasters, a fresh coat of paint, HD textures, a slightly updated Lara model. I am expecting fixed controls. 100%, this is a must. But given how well they made modern controls work in 1, 2, 3, I think they can. I'm really not expecting massive, grand changes like areas that were intended for the original that never made it in, like Cappadocia and Castle Kriegler, because when those places were cut, the story changed around it. And I don't think they're going to radically change the story and add these places back in, as cool as it would be to play in those places. Sure, they may well tidy up little pieces here and there, for example, making sure Karel is clearly visible in the dossiers, so he's not so much of a surprise later on. One thing I am curious about is if they will try and do more with Curtis. Development files show how many missing animations he had and how many awesome abilities he was due to have, so these things exist. But will they make it into the final game? We can dream. I'm not sure how realistic that is, though. Jonelle and Eric, Lara and Curtis's voice respectively, recorded a lot of lines for this game that never made it in, but they've since been salvaged and you can listen to them over on YouTube. There's certainly a possibility that some of these lines will be re-added to the game, and even that could provide little additions to the story that would clear certain aspects up. Another aspect is music. Though it really doesn't need it, it will likely be remastered and refined. At TR28 this last weekend, Peter Connolly was asked if there was more music he could provide for these games like he did with the final boss music at the end of TR3, and he said no. So I'm not really expecting any big musical changes across AOD or the previous two. But this is massively exciting. This is something that, of course, you'll know that I've wanted for a really long time, and it's finally happening. This February, we are completing the core design legacy. We will have Tomb Raider 1 through 6 remastered. And that is absolutely incredible. Who would have thought it? If you've spotted anything else that I've left out or not noticed myself, please let me know in the comments. I'm sure people will really enjoy reading through these things and seeing all of the missing bits and pieces and all of the new things that we might be getting with these remasters. So that's where I'll leave you for today. If you're doing your own investigations, happy hunting. Don't forget to subscribe for more Tomb Raider videos, and I'll see you soon.